At Service Logic, we believe the future of the skilled trades lies in training and development, and that's why we created the Edge, a platform dedicated to empowering our greatest assets, our people. From hands-on training to leadership development, Edge is where technicians grow their skills, expand their opportunities, and build lasting careers. Because when people succeed, our companies, our customers, and our industry thrive. This is the Edge. This is the future of the skilled trades.
I chose iConnect training equipment because I already previously had some iConnect training equipment. And I was very pleased with the equipment I had, the quality of it, and pre-designed labs that came with it. So when I expanded it more into the catalog, I decided I wanted to get this refrigeration trainer in my program to expand my program. My experience so far using the TU-155 has been pretty good experience, especially my second year students, and the light bulb kind of syndrome goes off when you see that little flicker in their eye and they're, oh, I got it. That's what us instructors, what we look for is the I got it moment. And this helps me to the I got it moment with my students, and that's what's my goal to achieve.
We are Daikin, the #1 global indoor comfort provider. Our innovative home and building solutions are engineered with energy efficiency and sustainability at their core, ensuring improved indoor air quality for all. From heating and cooling to ventilation, air purification, refrigeration technologies, and connected devices, we are at the forefront of technology, addressing the pressing challenges of sustainability.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC show. Yeah, Scott, thank you for hopping in here and letting us know, joining us from Northeast Ohio. Yeah, it got almost 60 here in Indiana today, but we have some crazy weather with all of this heat. We actually have a chance of tornadoes, and I'm sitting out here in the middle of nowhere in a tin can. So if it gets crazy, that'll be why. So if I have to go, just let Victoria hang in here and keep on running with the conversation. But we're anticipating some decent weather. Victoria, thank you for joining us so much today.
Cliff, thank you so much for hosting me.
Well, and that's actually real sky in the background. Where are you joining us from today?
I live in Sacramento, California. That's where I'm from. Where I am at the moment. Thankfully the sky cleared a little bit. It's been rainy for the past few days, so we got a lucky day today.
Yeah, rain in California. That doesn't happen all the time, does it?
Yeah, or snow, right?
Yeah. Whoa. 74, Katie in Hillsboro. That is for the Midwest. That's some serious temperature. Now, you guys always get fairly warm. I know it's interesting when you get over into that Missouri area. There's this temperature barrier, and it's always a little bit warmer than Illinois. But yeah, 74 is for February is kind of crazy. Paul, up in New Jersey, South Jersey. Hey, what's your weather up there, Paul? Now, I can say that I'm very excited to be joining from the mobile studio. Been doing a lot of work for the last 3 days. Got back from AHR, had some time to get caught up on some of the projects. Got all of the cameras finally tied in. And I think I'll probably do an episode here soon to show everyone all of the controls. Maybe even at the end of the show, if anyone's interested, we can dive into some of that. I did have some comments at AHR. And I've had them a couple other times, and AHR, I got a couple more. People came up and said, we love what you're doing, but aren't you tired of talking about heat pumps yet? I'm like, no, not really, but I guess we'll move on away from heat pumps for a little while. And so today we're going to spend some time diving deep into a really important conversation for us to start having now that we are starting to get more comfortable with our A2L refrigerant transition. 45 up in Jersey. Yeah, it is a little balmy weather for right now. So today we're spending some time with Victoria Garcia Massimo from Airzone. And we're going to be spending some time diving into A2L, VRV, and VRF zoning. Because as we start looking at our new systems, we have to be thinking about like what are all of our additional components? Because a lot of the manufacturers have not got into doing their own A2L ancillary components. And it's a big opportunity, and Airzone is like the leader at that. So we're grateful that you joined us today. Yeah, 59 in Chicago. That's a little warm for you too, isn't it, Kendrick? Oh, Murph, how you feeling? Murph was out doing some shows, doing some work, and fell and not feeling the greatest. Glad that you're joining us today. So hopefully you're kicked back and relaxing. So, Victoria, tell us a little bit about your background in the industry and a little bit of the background of Airzone, if you don't mind.
Of course, Cliff. So thanks again for having me. Very excited. I've been listening to your show lately, and I'm also gonna participate in the ESCO conference in Vegas coming
Ooh,
soon.
just a
I'm
few
gonna
weeks.
do a presentation about also the A2L transition and how zoning can help mitigate some of the challenges that this presents for contractors, both on the design, build, and the installation, as well as engineers. So I'm an engineer myself. I've been in the industry. Well, I say I was born in the industry. So I come from an HVAC background. My father, he is a mechanical contractor. And my grandfather, he was a refrigeration tech.
Oh, wow.
Very long story, maybe another podcast to
Yeah,
tell
I
you
want that on a
the whole
podcast when you get a chance.
background.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course I got into the industry since I graduated from school. I'm also a certified mechanical contractor in the state of Florida. So
Nice.
I know I said I live in
Wow.
California, but I moved from Miami, Florida about almost a year now, 10, 11 months. And while in Florida, I was a mechanical contractor for a few years. I ran my own business. So I learned all the contracting installation side of the business. I mainly did commercial work
Mhm.
through COVID. So I lived the pandemic a little bit. Then the Airzone opportunity came up, and I decided to join Airzone. I already knew Airzone from before. I
Mhm.
worked for a rep that represented Airzone in the US. So I traveled the US with the Airzone, with the Airzone pitch about what Airzone was, what we did. And back then, 7, 8, 9 years ago, I remember Airzone, we always focused on VRF technology, on the inverter technology, right? And I
You bet.
remember starting my conversation with customers like, "Are you familiar with VRF?" And believe it or not, most of the time people had no idea what I was talking about. Then it, of course, got a little bit better.
Mhm.
And well, it was in 2021, 2022 when Airzone decided to start an actual operation office, their own company here in the US, and they asked me to lead it. So they hired me. I hired a team of very wonderful, smart people that work with me.
Mm.
And well, since then I've been doing this, and very happy and proud of what we have accomplished, and excited to share more of our products and solutions today.
Very unique. When we talk about the solution that you provide, at least as far as I'm aware of, you're the only provider of the A2L zoning solution in our industry. Is that right?
Yes, I mean,
Mm.
yes, to an extent. What we do is very unique, meaning that we are, as far as I know, the only manufacturer, the only company that does what we do. So we, over the years, Airzone has been in business for almost 30 years now. And over the years, we have created relationships with manufacturers,
Mm.
Daikin, Mitsubishi, LG, Fujitsu, you name it. And this got us into a very interesting position of having a relationship with them in which they have shared with Airzone their manufacturer protocols. So we have
Oh,
NDAs in place, and we have access to the control of their units.
on the
Uh,
communicating protocols?
on the communicating protocols. So if we talk about, and
Wow, that's
we have
gold.
access for, we are compatible with about 200 brands
No
today.
kidding.
So, and we keep adding more and more as this technology, of course, grows.
Right.
I forgot to mention something there, Cliff. Airzone is originally a company from Spain. As you
Hmm.
probably have heard, the VRF, the inverter technology, is widely popular in Europe, also in
Absolutely.
Asia. Is becoming very popular and standard in the US, but we have been a little bit behind.
I
So,
agree.
of course, our largest markets are still in Europe, but that gave us a very competitive advantage on the fact that we all that communication technology that we already were selling in other markets, such as Italy or France. Now we have this technology here in the US, and it perfectly applies because the units are almost the same. The communication protocols of the manufacturers are the same.
Yeah, it's really growing popularity here in the US. A lot of our audience today is educators at vocational, secondary, post-secondary vocational programs. And I've went to a couple of different schools within the last few months. And what I realized is we have a lot of VRV, VRF systems being installed in the classrooms. So the schools and the educators are preparing for these transitions because it provides a lot of solutions. We're going through a lot of changes. And as we evolve as an industry, we have to stay up to date with how the equipment is evolving and make sure that it is in the classroom and that we have all the components to make sure that we have successful installations. So I foresee as well a significant growth in not just in the commercial applications, but even in some of the larger residential applications.
Of course, I agree with you. And I listened to your podcast. I believe the last one you did, you interviewed the product manager from Allied.
Oh, yeah.
You said you are a fan of ductless technology. So that's a good thing. Ductless is inverter technology, but hopefully I can convince you on going back to ducted and adding some components there to improve that.
And I'm realistic. I live in the Midwest. Almost every home manufactured in the Midwest is on a ducted system, and many of which are not sized properly, like most of the country. And so when we look at the solutions that we can do with VRV, VRF, it really changes the application because now we can get the proper amount of flow in those ducted systems. We can add additional ducted systems. We have a variety of options, and it really solves a lot of the problems that we currently see in one-to-one residential ducted split systems.
No, of course, and VRF, VRV, it is zoning by itself, right? Sometimes when I talk to engineers or contractors, they're like, "Oh, so you do zoning for zoning, kind of zoning on top of zoning systems?" And I'm like, "Well, we just do it a little bit differently, right?
That's right.
I like to say we're the golden mean, meaning that we you don't have to go all the way to ductless, which I know is hard to adopt. We don't have to go all the way to ducted, somewhere in the middle, and use Airzone for the independent temperature control per zone."
You bet. Very cool. All right, I'm excited. This is a great conversation item. Oh yeah,
Thank
why
you.
are we changing?
No, definitely. I mean, I'm sure everyone has heard a lot about this. A lot of this is a trending topic, right? The refrigerant transition. The funny thing is that the refrigerant transition already happened years ago in Europe. So I don't live in Europe. I'm not from Europe, but my colleagues from Airzone in Spain, they always joke and say, "We come from the future. Don't panic.
Oh, that's
It's all
great.
okay." So yeah, it's been a while since they've been using the A2L, mainly the
Yeah.
R-32. Well, we are transitioning because well, the A2L is way more. It's a more efficient refrigerant. It's also more friendly with the environment, right? The GWP stands for global warming potential. We know that A2L is way lower than the current A1, which is R-410. And well, actually, in I always like to mention this when I do my presentations. We are transitioning into A2L, but A2L is not the end of it. In
No
5 or 6 or 10 years from now, we may be
transition.
having another podcast and we'll talk about the new
Yep.
refrigerant, which most likely
Absolutely.
is going to be propane.
Yep.
So yeah, we have to find the right regulations and how to play and use it. But this is not the end of it. We're going to continue evolving. We're going to continue changing, and that's going to be the new transition in the future. But I mean, that's I guess a conversation for
Thank
the future.
Oh yeah. So I'm glad to hear this, so that I'm not the only one out here getting called a kook for saying that A2Ls is our transitional refrigerant into A3s, because it is long term. It is going to be a transition, but when we start talking about zoning and we start talking about refrigerant charges, that's where Airzone kind of helps come into play for solving some of these solutions, and we'll talk a little bit about that throughout the process too.
Of course, yes, definitely. So yeah, the R290, the propane, by the way, has a GWP which is almost zero, so that is much better. But well, what is the problem with it? What is the problem with A2L now? That is a little bit flammable, right? It's a little bit flammable. Therefore, all regulations on ASHRAE, ASHRAE 15, ASHRAE 34, then local regulations, federal regulations, EPA, they're all making it a little bit more strict on how we design and how we install these the units that use A2L. And the special attention is on VRF. Actually, VRF had it pushed the date.
Yeah, an extension.
The EPA pushed the date. It had an extension for about 2 years because, well, manufacturers weren't ready, and they wanted to make sure everybody was aware on what the change was going to be. But the change is here now. The transition is here. We have to embrace it, and hopefully you, Cliff, and your audience will find Airzone as a solution for some of the challenges that these the new refrigerant has due to the flammability component of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a question we get a lot is, how do we manage A2L in our VRV, VRF applications? And
of course,
yeah,
and it is the easy way of seeing it, because we could be talking about ASHRAE 15 and the refrigerant concentration and exactly the
concentration levels,
the concentration levels, the pounds of refrigerant per cubic feet and all that. But the basic way of explaining it is, if we have a unit in the space, right, and we have a leak in that unit, where's the leak going to stay? It's going to stay in the space. So the smaller the space is, then of course the larger chances are of having a life hazard situation, right? A fire or whatever it is. What we do at Airzone through our zoning controls is, well, why don't we merge 3, 4, 5 zones together in a ducted air handling unit? Our customers in our industry is already into ducted technology, make that ducted unit efficient, inverter, VRF. And then that way, if I have a leak in a small space, my leak is not staying there. My spaces are connected. So my leak is actually going into all those 4 or 5 areas in, well, this is a beautiful project, a beautiful home, but if I have a leak there where I have 70 degrees downstairs, or let's go to the other one, 72 degrees, that looks like the smallest room in that house. I don't think that house has small rooms, but that house, the 72 Fahrenheit temperature. If I have a leak there and I have one unit serving those 2 zones, 70 and 72, well, my releasable area, as it's called, is the whole first floor of that home, right? So I have higher chances of complying with the regulations, with ASHRAE 15, 34, the local regulations, etc. Because we not only have to look into ASHRAE. I'm very involved with ASHRAE. I'm part of the 8.7 technical committee, which is for VRF technology.
Yep.
But more than that, we also have to look into local regulations, like what are the states saying, what are the cities, the code enforcements in places like California or New York, New Jersey, that are very, very strict with this kind of things. So yeah, that is the concept. If I have a leak there, my releasable area for that leak is much larger. So there's lower chances of creating a life hazard situation.
Sure.
How does the Airzone technology play a role here? Well, because you can ask me, well, I'm just going to install a ducted unit. That's it. Yeah, but you want to still have that temperature control per zone that VRF is supposed to give you, right? So the way the Airzone technology works is through the manufacturer protocol. In some cases, through the manufacturer protocol, that's something we are updating in our equipment. Again, in some cases, will be through the manufacturer protocol. In other cases, we'll need to get the contractor, to the mechanical contractor, to wire the leak detector from the unit into our zone board.
Oh, sure.
But in many cases, we are getting the updates, the updated protocols from the manufacturer. So we're going to be able to read the leak from the actual manufacturer protocol as an error code. We also read error codes on the unit, so it will be, it's not called an error code, it's called something like alarm code, I want to say.
Alarm coding, yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. So what's going to happen is the dampers are going to open, the thermostats will show that there is a leak, and they're going to have a buzzard, they are going to blink, and we're going to release control of the unit. So the unit, my Daikin or Mitsubishi, LG, Fujitsu unit, is going to follow its own sequence of operation that it's supposed to do when a leak has been detected. So that way we keep it safe for all the occupants in the building. And we are we're not detecting the leak, but we're following what the sequence of operation is supposed to be after the leak has been detected by the leak detector, either in the unit or in the space. And that is what's going to happen. But the interesting part of it, and where we're thinking a little bit outside the box, is I can still have one temperature control per zone, but I can take advantage of the combined spaces by having a ducted air handler.
Okay. So I'm seeing where you're achieving the protocol. So if we had one in a single space, we actually have the ability to open up everything and increase the square footage, the cubic volume of the
Releasable area,
potential refrigerant
exactly.
charge.
Correct,
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's
Okay.
like, I don't know if you ever, Cliff, had a gas kitchen, right? And there was ever like a propane kitchen, and there was ever a leak, you can smell it.
Sure.
And then what would you do? You open the windows, right? You make sure the leak
Right.
is going away.
Yeah. Move air.
It's kind of the same, right? We're trying to open all the spaces so the leak can dissipate, can go away. That is what we're looking for, and that's why the unit is going to go to follow a sequence of operation that most likely is going to go to high fan speed, dampers open, so I can take advantage of the interconnected or connected spaces. And yeah, that is how we create these solution. And actually, in these fix that you're showing, at some point we're going to get to an example that we have at Airzone, in which we compared a traditional VRF project with multiple heads to only adding 2 ducted air handlers.
Oh, very cool. Okay. Yeah, it changes the application capabilities quite a bit then.
Of course, it is.
Very cool. Oh, hold on. There we go. Lost you
Yes.
for a second.
Yes, I'm back.
All right.
Yes, correct. It changes a little bit. Also, here in this image that you're showing is something I really like a lot. This has nothing to do with the refrigerant, but something we can do with our zoning system as well is integrate supplemental heating. So many projects in the Midwest, for instance,
Oh,
Canada, in the Northeast, like here,
yeah.
you will have air, but air is not enough. Your heat pump may not be enough. So you also need some radiant baseboard heating, maybe hydronics. So we can integrate both, and you can select how do you want it to work. Do you want air first and then radiant, or radiant first and then air? And when do you want both at the same time? So that creates savings, obviously, as we have one control system, one thermostat controlling both, but also comfort, because, well, now I can better control my heating as well as the air, and I just have one thermostat for both. So even there's some places in San Francisco, for instance, and I had a meeting with an engineer today who was designing a project in Florida, and he was saying that the bathrooms have only radiant. Customers like that heated floors. We can also integrate those only radiant zones as well as part of the Airzone system. Yeah.
Okay, that's a huge solution because one of the things that we've been encountering, especially in the larger residential and into our commercial projects, when we're looking at heat pumps for for sole heating and primary heating, a lot of homeowners particularly like to have some type of redundant heating source, right? Or they've already got an existing hydronic system that they want to incorporate at least components of that into their whole architecture, and so you're actually able to do that through your own controller.
Correct. Yes, that's one of the coolest things that our system can do. I mean,
Yeah,
not
that is pretty cool.
our A2L related, obviously, but it's pretty cool to have one controller or one system that can control both. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we still have a lot of hydronic systems that are being utilized for at least partial spaces. Even if it is one area of the home, and we want to now condition spaces that weren't very well conditioned before, now we have that solution of being able to incorporate a new, high performance VRV VRF residential application with zone controlling and our hydronics. And then in commercial, it gives us that ability to have a complete redundant system.
Correct. Exactly.
Nice.
Yeah, you got it. So many people say, I want this in my home. So, we meet with them for maybe business purposes, but they're like, oh, can you connect with my unit? It is a Daikin, and I have these supplemental heating.
Right. No, that's quite intriguing.
Cool. So yeah, here we can see our zoning system, how the structure of it is, right? We have, for instance, 3 ducted air handlers. These are handlers are horizontal air handlers, but they could be multi-position, vertical. These 3 indoor units are connected to a single condensing unit. This is a small VRV or VRF system. Each of the air handlers will have a zone control board and a number of dampers, up to 10 we can do with our loose
Per
damper
board?
solution per board, up to 10 dampers. And in our Platinum Box Easy Zone, which you're going to show later, we can do up to 6. Then each damper, as you can tell here, is going to have its own thermostat. Some thermostats could be wireless for retrofit applications if needed. We communicate radio with the damper. We can also mix and match, play with it. Maybe I have a larger zone with 2 dampers, a single thermostat. That's of course doable. It all depends on what's needed. And something that we do at Airzone that we feel very proud of is we help our customers with all the selections. So we have a projects team in which we have a group of engineers, super smart engineers. They help customers on the contracting side as well as the engineering side to select what they need, right? What is
Right.
the unit that I have, model, brand, CFMs of that unit, and what dampers do I need, what zone dampers, what sizes, and all that. We believe that if a project is properly designed and then we train the contractor and it's properly installed, you're not going to have any problem at all, right? That is, I don't think they're bad products, they're bad applications or installations.
Hmm.
So, so yeah, that is something else that we provide. Dampers can have different sizes, from 6 inches all the way to 14 inches based on the size of the zone. And well, we will have that independent temperature control. So here we can see our motorized damper, the individual zone module for ductless heads, for instance, that are somewhere in the project that we want to make part of Airzone, and the zone supplemental heating
Wow.
zone module for the radiant or the baseboard heating, as we talked. Something also very important to mention, Cliff, not meaning to get into a lot of detail into Airzone, but something I wanted to mention that I think is important is that we don't work with third-party thermostats or third-party dampers. I know there are zoning systems out there that may be able to use an any 24 volts damper. Since our system integrates with the unit,
Yeah,
modulates the
communicating.
unit speed, communicates, then we cannot do that because our damper is modulating. It has different steps based on the temperature and on the position of the damper. It will be able to communicate back to the unit and tell the unit what to do. Maybe,
Hmm.
more zones are in demand. Let's increase the speed. Let's change the temperature. Since we have the ability to do this, which is very unique, we don't need a bypass damper because of that. Then we unfortunately cannot use any other damper than our own,
Yeah.
which is a very common question, of
Yeah,
course.
absolutely. It makes sense. I'm just thinking about a solution for this for a project that I encountered just a few months ago. There was one VRV manufacturer that some of their indoor heads are usable for a residential as well as a VRV application.
Okay.
And as a manufacturer, they were not going to be adding A2L detection to that series of indoor units, even though they could function on a VRV system. So they were putting it into the hands of the engineer as the contractor to decide if this is going to be in an A2L application, you're going to have to come up with a solution. And my question was, as a manufacturer, you don't have a solution? Or like, no, we don't have a solution. It's a
Wow.
SKU that could be used in a residential ductless one-to-one. It could be used in a multi-port, but it is a unit that could be installed into one of their or a couple of their commercial VRV units. And there wasn't a solution that I had seen, but this one absolutely does. That single zone, individual zone module would be perfect for an application like that.
No, of course, definitely, and that's something I've seen. As I mentioned before, we have the ASHRAE 15, ASHRAE 34, then we have the local regulations,
Yeah.
state regulations, EPA. So we are in that transition in which everybody's kind of waiting and seeing, okay, who's going to enforce it? Where am I, and who's going to enforce this to me? So I know that in some cases, some residential applications are kind of in an exception
Yeah.
mode type of thing. So they don't need to comply with the whole thing, but still, I'm not saying that it's the refrigerant can actually will create a fire, but it can create
Right.
a life hazard
For safety.
situation. And when that happens is when they're
Yeah,
going to go back and see, okay, who designed it, who sold
absolutely.
it, who installed it, and we want to avoid that at all costs. So
You bet.
that is the reason why, the more options, the more
Hmm.
solutions we have, the best it would be. Also, I believe, Cliff, that this is the message we've been pitching for the past year or so at Airzone. Engineers and contractors are not thinking about zoning as a solution for the A2L. They're not. As I
Agree.
mentioned before, I'm very involved with ASHRAE, and I know a lot of people in ASHRAE. I've sat down in presentations from experts on ASHRAE 15, DLs from ASHRAE distinguished lecturers, and they know everything about ASHRAE 15, about the new refrigerant, the transition, but they don't have zoning as a solution. So I remember in one presentation that one of these experts, a very very smart professor, he did a presentation on the ASHRAE chapter about A2L and ASHRAE 15. And so he was explaining, right, a problem solution. And then in the solution, he had shut off valves, leak detection systems,
Hmm.
all these things. And I remember raising my hand and say, "Hey, professor, have you thought about zoning?" And he was like, "Oh, wow, that is a great idea. Yes, I'm gonna add it to my presentation in the future." So because I think that is actually and if people are not thinking about it. So I know your audience has a lot of educators. I think educators should think about this too, and may not be the solution. There's no one single solution, but is one option, right?
Absolutely. There's a good question that just came in from Paul. When we look at some of the VRV systems, some of ours are like a 3-pipe heat recovery unit. Uh, so when we're talking about like the zoning solutions, are we able to, on a heat recovery VRV installation, still be able to run heat and cool on different zones all from the same piece of equipment?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I always get that asked. Do you mind going back to the previous one? This one.
Yep.
Okay, so for instance, let's say that this is a heat recovery, right? We have 3 units. Something we lose, we gotta be very mindful of that. Something we lose is that simultaneous heating and cooling on every single zone. So for instance, going to the top top left unit, I have 3 zones. I cannot have heating and cooling simultaneous from a single
Mhm.
unit in those 3 zones, right? So I have
Right.
to be mindful that my one unit is going to be in either heating or cooling,
You
and
bet.
all those 3 zones are going to be following that mode. How does it work? So when the installer or the contractor installs the system, he's going to select which is his main zone. So it's called, a master and slave kind
Yep.
of
You bet.
situation.
Yep. Primary,
So the
secondary.
main zone, correct, primary, secondary. I know master slave is, we shouldn't be using those terms anymore.
And I
So the
grew up with it
main,
though. I'm so used to it. I'm trying to train
yeah, no, no,
myself.
no, no, yeah, no meaning to offend anyone, but yeah, the main zone or the main thermostat is going to select the mode. Okay, so if it's heating, my 3 zones are going to be in heating. If it's cooling, my 3 zones are going to be in cooling. This could be a challenge in some places. I know. I mean, in Florida, it may not be. In California, it may not be. But if we are in, I don't know, Wisconsin, it may be 25 at night, but during the day it could be 60. So maybe some people want heating and cooling at the same time. I would want heating, maybe you want cooling. So we have to be mindful with that. And that is something that we also take into account when we help design the project. Okay, what zones are we merging together? Are they facing the same side of the building, east or west? Where is the sun coming up? Where is the sun going down? So that in our zones kind of similar in size. Maybe all the zones that are closer together and have like similarities in windows, in dimensions, are going to be together into the same unit. But in this case, I could have the 2 top units in heating and the bottom unit in cooling. Just
Okay.
that my 5 zones in the bottom are going to be in cooling, and my
All in
6 zones at the top are
Yeah.
going to be heating. Exactly. We do have an auto mode, so we can, in theory, have heating and cooling at the same time with this dual set point. But of course, I have one unit, so I have to be mindful.
Exactly.
The way the system will work is, let's go with the most extreme. If they're both the same,
Right.
it's going to go to heating first. And
Got a
then
swing.
Exactly. Dampers calling for heating open and dampers calling for cooling close.
Sure.
It auto changes. We gotta also understand that the unit has a delay. Could be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, depending on the manufacturer. Then changes, and my dampers calling for cooling open, while my dampers calling for heating are gonna close. But yeah, that's very important to mention. It could be considered a limitation, but if it's properly designed, we shouldn't have a problem at all. It always comes up though, because I know one of the beauties of VRF VRV is that simultaneous heating and cooling.
You bet. Great solution, though. I mean, it allows us to operate it. We just, have to be mindful of the design of our duct layout.
Of course, of course. And this is EasyZone, by the way, Cliff. Super interesting, very cool product. This is our best selling around the world. EasyZone is a pre-built planning box that comes as is. So as you can see it, is how it comes. So it comes in different versions, small, medium, large. The smallest is a 3-zone plenum. The biggest is a 6-zone plenum. So the EasyZone on the left, which as you can tell, it fits horizontal units or pancakes, fan coils, concealed air handlers, depending on where you are, how you call them. That is actually the most common one that we sell around the world. Obviously, in other parts of the world, there's not as much space as we have in the US. In places like France or Italy, there's no closets for AC, right? So they do more of these kind of units. And the EasyZone is perfect because we not only have the communication with the unit based on the manufacturer you're using, but also based on the manufacturer and model of that unit that you're using. That piece in between the unit and the plenum, we call it the collar. The collar will perfectly seamlessly fit the unit. So we have created collars for every single manufacturer model. So we got to know, okay, which unit are you using? I don't know, Mitsubishi PAD 48, et cetera, et cetera. So we will tell you which color you need and which plenum you need. The smaller the unit, obviously, it's going to be a smaller plenum, less zones. I don't have as much air. The larger the unit, my plenum is, of course, going to be a little bit larger, up to 6 zones. These only comes in 6 or 8-inch dampers, and we can also combine them together. So in that one that you're seeing on the left, and also on the right, you can have 2 zones. So 2 dampers for a larger zone and 2 dampers for a larger zone. We launched these a couple of years ago in the US, and then we realized that many installations use multi-position or vertical air handlers. So customers were asking for a plenum for that. So that's how we created, we created another plenum box. It's very similar, almost the same. What changes is that color. Instead of connecting into the unit directly, it's going to go in the ductwork, correct? Yeah. So it's a little bit more work for the installer to create that transition, that color transition, but still makes it very, very easy to install. Because at this point, I just need to run the flex to every zone, and then wire a thermostat into the zone, into the plenum. That's it.
Now, so does a controller come already pre-installed and pre-wired to the zone motor?
By controller, do you mean the thermostat or the zone?
The actual EasyZone board?
The actual EasyZone board comes already pre-installed in the plenum. Yeah, it comes pre-assembly, like pre-wired, pre-insulated. Only thing I gotta do is as you can see in these wiring diagrams, just wire the thermostat. Or I can do wireless thermostats too. So I just need to tell my thermostat, this is the temper you're gonna control.
Oh, that would communicate directly with it.
Correct, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Intriguing.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good looking product.
Yeah, so this is a EasyZone. Yes, it's very interesting, and it reduces installation time and effort a lot. Like it's honestly about an hour installation. Also reduces the potential errors from the installer, right? Because everything is supposed to fit. Like here is where the plenum goes. It should fit there. If it doesn't fit, then you don't have the right plenum.
Yeah, nothing worse than being up on a ladder overhead trying to get things to fit.
Exactly.
Wait a minute, I'm off 3/8 of an inch. How did this happen? Yeah,
Exactly.
super
So, but
cool.
the same concept, it's the same concept as our loose damper solution, still looking for one temperature control per zone.
Yeah.
Just that, it's a little bit less flexible as it comes in a plenum. If we want more flexibility, the simultaneous supplemental heating and air and all that, then we would suggest going with our loose damper solution called VAF. But both EasyZone and our loose damper solution VAF, they both have their A2L ready. Okay, they come with that leak detection system that allows us to get the information from the leaks and making sure dampers open and everything that we're supposed to do, it happens.
Okay. So we can add a refrigerant detector directly onto like that VEF board onto the
What we do is
board.
you would wire. I mean, two options. If we read the leak from the manufacturer's protocol,
Right.
there's
We don't need
no
it.
need to do anything. Yeah, we're gonna read it as an error code, and it's everything is gonna happen seamlessly. But if we don't, we have a handful of manufacturers we can do that with at the moment, and adding more. The units have a leak detector, so we can wire that leak detector into our board.
Okay.
We have
Problem
a
solved.
we have an input in there. Yes. This slide, I really like it. So this is the one I told you before that has a comparison, right? So as you can tell, VRV, VRF on the left, it is zoning. It is zoning by itself. So why do I need zoning and a zoning system for a zoning system, right? So this project, this is a case study that we did last year. So this was a dental clinic, multiple units, one per zone, and we have 8 cassette units. It is some more refrigerant piping. Then when we change it to Airzone, so what we would do is changing to the right, which is okay, let's not do 8 units. Why don't we do 2 units? Instead of doing 8 cassettes, we can only do 2 duct handlers. We're adding EasyZone for each. In this case, we're using our plenum boxes. And very importantly, on the left-hand side, we have 16 pounds of refrigerant.
Right.
So we are not complying with, in this case, we're using ASHRAE 15. I believe the main problem is the zone in the middle at the bottom. That's a very small zone with a large unit. Maybe we're even oversizing that unit for that zone because it's the smallest zone, it's the smallest unit that the manufacturer provides. And on the right-hand side, we only are using 10 pounds. The concentration is 10 pounds of refrigerant.
Oh wow.
Therefore, we are now complying with ASHRAE 15. And again, what I explained at the beginning, right? If we have a leak there in that zone, my leak is staying there.
We
But
have
if I have a leak
isolation.
there, now my zones are combined. So my leak is going away faster. So the refrigerant concentration is not as high as it was before.
Didn't realize how much building engineers are having to rethink their design processes with A2L. I get so stuck in the residential compliance side that haven't really spent much time here. And yeah, it's fascinating. That's definitely an evolving
Thank
sector of
you.
our industry. A lot of retraining.
No, definitely. No, definitely. And actually engineers are sometimes even changing technologies because they don't know how to comply
Hmm.
with the codes, right? And with the standards. So that's what we're trying to do in collaboration with manufacturers. We want them to stay in the VRF lane. We want them to keep doing heat pumps, inverter technology, electrification, everything we've been praising. And we don't want them to, go back to maybe chillers or,
Hmm.
uh, cooling towers,
Exactly.
water source heat pumps, and those larger equipment. We want them to stay with VRF. So again, it's a challenge. I don't blame them. It is a challenge. So this is a solution for them.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Hopefully, our engineers that are watching are going, okay, I've been looking for my solution. Here it is.
Hopefully. If not, the educators will tell contractors, and contractors will tell
Yep.
the engineers.
Absolutely. Well, even as
Yeah.
a technician, as a contractor, if I'm installing a system that's been designed for a building and I'm looking at it going, well, why did they do it this way? I don't understand why we're using so much more ducted than we did in the past. Now it's simple to look at it, go, oh, it's very simple. It's really it's refrigerant driven.
Of course, of course. Yep. Yep. I mean, it is a challenge. We know it's here. It's happening.
Mhm.
Uh,
Oh no, we've lost Victoria. Hopefully she'll be back here in a second. I had that little problem earlier. We'll give it a chance to come back through. It is very intriguing how much we are evolving our refrigerants in so many industries, not just our residential and our commercial. We look at the VRV, VRF applications. As educators, are any of you looking at adding VRV, VRF projects, A2L projects into your classroom? Because if you are, this is a very good solution to be able to show, how we can relook at the applications. We just came back from a college right around Christmas. We went up to the office and went and took a look at a complete VRV, VRF installation. And when I start thinking about the A2L applications, this definitely comes to mind. Well, hopefully Victoria can join us here very shortly. And there's only a couple slides. I'll go ahead and kind of talk a little bit about some of the connectivity, because I looked at this earlier, kind of diving into how we're doing communication and remote communication. So we're still very much like our existing BACnet and Modbus communications. We're able to introduce a web server. She's back with us.
Hey, I'm back. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened to
It's
this whole
okay.
setup that I had, but thank you for having me back. So, yes, we are a controls company, right? So all of our
Mhm.
zoning systems, we've been focusing more on the refrigerant, the design, the dampers, and all that. But then, what do customers want now? Residential and commercial connectivity, right? Everybody
Yeah.
wants to connect to their phones, to their smart home system for the high-end residences, to the BMS in case of the commercial projects, or the EMS, even hospitality. Everybody is trying now to connect. So we have this component called the web server hub, which is completely optional. You can still just have your thermostat, old school style of controlling it,
Standalone.
controlling
Mhm.
each damper. But if you want to go one step ahead, and most of our customers obviously do, you can connect to the web server hub to multiple Airzone zone boards, either on our loose damper solution or easy zone. And that is going to allow the customer to have a backnet control, MSTP and IP, connect via Modbus, for instance, to another BMS that they may have, or control it through the Airzone Cloud app. We have our own app in which every single Airzone zone will show up, so it can be controlled, configured, select schedules, change temperatures, modes, etc., names. We tie into smart home systems, so we have a direct integration with Lutron, Crestron, Control4, if that rings a bell. I know
Yep.
in our industry we're not so so
Home
familiar
automations.
with this home
Mhm.
automations, or basic home automation like Alexa, Google Home. So yeah, we have almost every single control system or BMS covered with this, and we keep adding more. So if a new control system comes in the future for BMS or residential, we're going to add it. We can update the web server hub, and now my customer can control their Airzone system through that new control system out there, like BMS or EMS or a smart home system.
And am I seeing it correctly with that web server hub? You're actually managing the communicating, two-wire communicating DC as well. Is that 5 wire? Is that our legacy 24-volt AC?
Oh, the 5 wires. Yes, it is just a connection. That's how we connect to our uh, through our through our own wire.
Mhm.
It is a 4 wire. It's a 5 wire because the fifth is ground. So it's twisted, shielded per wire.
Okay.
Is two pairs of communication, two pairs of power. So
Okay,
that's
that makes
how
sense.
the web server hub powers. So if you see the 5 wires connecting to the, let's say, the first system number one, that's why it's number one, and then I can daisy chain the next one, the next one, the next one, up to like 30.
Wow.
So with one web server hub, I can connect my whole installation. If I have a large home or I have a building, a small building, I can connect them all to one single web server hub. That web server hub can also be connected via Wi-Fi, or it can be connected via Ethernet. Okay, so to the internet in case my internet connection is not too stable. We know a lot about that, right, from our practices today.
Yeah, for those that aren't aware, we have invested probably 2.5 hours making sure that we get over the last 2 days, making sure that we got proper connectivity both on our side as well as Victoria's, and weather, internet. It's you never know with these live productions. We just did one where we actually lost power here in the studio, and so we've resolved that. We actually have an inverter onboard generator that we've added to make sure that we have plenty of additional power, because you never know. But the beauty of doing these live educational opportunities is that we get to interact with you all. We're grateful that you're taking time out of your day to hang out with us. Some of you may be working on VRV, VRF products, some may not. The important part is that you're joining us and that you're learning about all of these changes, and that we're being prepared for an evolution of our industry. Our industry is not going to look the same in 5 years as it does today. Definitely not going to look the same in 10 years. And so when we look at what's changing, it's a matter of partnering with our manufacturers so that we're getting firsthand information and we're not learning third hand, fourth hand, fifth hand. Oh, I heard somewhere that this is something that's out there and it works. No, we're actually working with our manufacturers directly. So we're so grateful that Airzone is spending time with us, and Victoria, you're taking time out of your day to help
No,
educate
thank
an
you.
industry.
Happy to do so. Happy to do so. I hope to see you guys at the ESCO conference in a few weeks.
I am very much looking forward to that. So you're going to be doing a class with us at the conference, correct?
I will, yes. We'll be talking about the refrigerant transition and zoning as a solution for that. So similar to what we were talking about today, just
Yeah.
a deeper dive into it.
Excellent. So anyone that's joining us and they want to learn more about the solutions, oh, look at there. How do we connect?
Yeah, for sure. So the Humans of HVAC is, I wanted to briefly mention about it. This is a initiative that we have at Airzone that we're super proud of. Airzone just funds it, but it let's say it's not any type of marketing for the company. It started with the pandemic. So in the pandemic, in a lot of parts of the world, it was hard for people in the industry to work, right? They had to stay home, or so we started making interviews to these people to find out how they were handling the pandemic, how they were feeling, if they wanted to share with us. And it stopped for a little while, and then now we are taking it back live. We're interviewing different professionals in our industry that are that are adding a lot of value into it, like people who have very interesting stories to share that have been in the industry for long, and they share with us how they got into it and how is it going for them. And there is very inspirational, I want to say. So Human of HVAC is a page that I definitely recommend people to follow, but airzonecontrol.com, Airzone Control on Instagram, and Airzone Americas on Instagram as well. That is our new Instagram page. And yeah, I'm also on LinkedIn for people to follow. Always posting cool stuff that is happening with Airzone and with the industry. Always around, going to events and trying to spread the word about the refrigerant transition and zoning.
Love it. Yeah, a lot happening out there. Anyone in the audience have any questions? You have anything that you'd like to learn a little bit more, or any of the content that you didn't quite grasp? Now's a great time to be able to hop in the chat and give us some input on that. While we're doing that, I am going to show off some of the goodies I've been working on around here.
I do have a question for you, Cliff.
Yes.
Did I convince you? Ductless or ducted with zoning?
I'm convinced that I can solve problems with a ducted solution. And
Cool.
it does make you relook at a project, especially when we can start, working on systems, where we're controlling up to 8 different ducts on one capability, one zone. There's so much flexibility in doing a distribution like this. And when I look at it as a contractor, I look at that reduction in the amount of copper piping. That's huge. Anyone who has purchased any copper recently understands the value in reducing materials as much as possible. And yeah, that copper pipe is not cheap. So
Yeah, the new refrigerant is also not cheap either. I've heard that
exactly.
is quite a little bit more expensive than the R410. Unfortunately, it's more efficient, so you need less, but still
Right.
is pricey.
And going to continue as we go down this HFC phase down.
Correct.
We've got another, year and a half, almost 2 years before we go through the next big slide, 2028, where we're going through the big slide, another 40% reduction, 30% reduction, which will set us down to where 80%. Um, all HFC refrigerants are really going to be increasing in cost. And as we look at our design, anytime we can reduce that installation material, like I said, with refrigerant, as well as our copper line sets, just helps us rethink our projects pretty significantly. So yeah, next time I do a layout, I'll be considering what my ducted options are.
Yeah, and we can integrate your baseboard or radiant heating because I know you are there in the cold climate. So
I am. Very cool.
awesome.
Actually, we're close enough to the top of the hour. I think I'll save the demo for another day. I may actually just shoot some videos. I've had a lot of people asking, like, what have I gotten done out here in this studio? And it's a lot. And we're actually right close to the top of the hour. So, Victoria, thank you so much for spending time with us today. We're grateful that you're joining us, and definitely look forward to seeing you here in a few weeks at the National HVACR Education Conference. For those of you out there who haven't already made your reservations, get on it. I think I seen an email today where the conference hotel room registration ends on the 26th for special pricing. After that, you'll be at regular rate. So if you haven't got all of your reservations done, do it soon. We look forward to seeing you all there. And we'll see you next week on Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC show. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.